Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another thing where I talk about things. Today, we're going to talk about the live-action Death Note movie on Netflix. This is probably rather old, rather dated. For one thing, Death Note was cool when I was in, high school, I think, or around when I graduated high school. It was, towards the end, the tail end of that, when I was, 18, 19, something like that. I think it was around, 2000... middle of the 2000s, the middle of the 2000s. So, yeah, it'd be around that time. I think the Death Note live-action movie came out sometime after that, but it's on Netflix right now. You can go watch it if you want. And I feel like if you're a glutton for bad movies, legitimately bad movies, movies that are not good, really, even if you... it's boring, it's not, fun to watch bad, it's just really just kind of, bad all around. But man, I thought I would talk about it because I actually first did a video where I was trying to explain the Death Note movie, and I kept going back and I was comparing it to the original show. I was like, yeah, in the original Death Note this happened, and then the movie this happened. And as I was going through this video, I realized how challenging that was as a setup, because although you can do that, the trouble with the original story is that it's a suspense. So, these characters have all these little twists and turns, and they do these things for these, really important story reasons. The rules are meaningful, the main characters start doing all these experimentation to figure out how their powers work, and it's kind of like a, it's like a Sherlock Holmes versus Moriarty thing. It's a big suspense kind of thing. But the live-action film, I don't know what it's trying to be. It's definitely not suspenseful, and a lot of what it does is completely illogical. So I thought, I'll do this video again, I'll re-record it, which I do sometimes with personal times when I don't like the original take, but I'll do this again. But this time, instead of trying to compare it at all to the previous Death Note, let's just talk about the movie in a vacuum, as though there was no other Death Note and the movie was the only thing that existed. And mind you, the movie makes no sense when you do this, and I think that's the best reason for us to just talk about this movie in its vacuum. So, yeah, we're not going to talk about the original Death Note. We're not going to compare the far superior product to this awful movie. We're just going to talk about the Death Note live action, because otherwise you might be filled in on what's supposed to happen, and you'll see, what they were supposed to do and recognize it just didn't happen. But it's funny though, because before we start, I just want to say, the live action Death Note movie, it feels like someone was given a synopsis of Death Note, and then they were just completely dismissive of the entire thing. They were just this sounds stupid. Someone tried to sit down and explain all this stuff to this director or whatever, and he was like, that's dumb. That's really dumb. I don't want to do that. I imagine a 12-year-old stomping around, or a 6-year-old or whatever, stomping around. You're like, no, I don't like Death Note. I don't want to do Death Note. But whoever was in charge of him told him that he had to have all these plot points in the movie. So he included these plot points in the movie, but otherwise he tried to make a totally different movie that had nothing to do with Death Note. Super weird, super weird. Also, apparently the female lead, this is only a rumor that I heard someone tell me, but apparently the female lead was the actual real-life girlfriend of the male lead, and that's how she got the part. And I'd say that she's not a very good actor, but to be honest, there's not really a lot of very good acting in the film in general. Some people did okay, but I don't know if they really got enough screen time to be unlikable. There are basically no likable characters in the film whatsoever. So that said, the movie opens up, and it just cracked me up. I knew I was in for a bad movie when, the intro feels just man... it felt like I was trapped in a time warp. Time was folding in on itself. It was just sheer agony. Sitting here watching they slowly zoom into a football field. You see some kids out playing football. And then there's some cheerleaders. And here's a boy sitting on the bleachers. And it kind of just goes on like this, and there's nothing really happening, but it's all just I can't recall if it was actually in slow motion, but in retrospect, I feel like it was. I don't think it was, but I feel like there was some kind of time distortion going on with the intro. It was just that bad. And so I'm just watching it, and it reminded me of, in Manos, The Hands of Fate, there's this whole scene where they just, spend, 5 minutes driving or something like that, and they just have, all this, stock footage of them driving down the road, but, nothing is happening. So your first impression of Manos, The Hands of Fate, one of the most terrible films ever made, is that most of the movie is just going to be about this boring. And Death Note is no exception. Like, I got to see this, like, this first thing. Like, Manos the Hands of Fate, what happened was that they were supposed to be playing the credits over this incredibly boring driving scene. And they forgot to add the credits in post, so what you just wind up seeing is, like, just this really long, boring driving scene with nothing in it and no explanation as to why you're watching this. So, Death Note, I feel like the same thing happened. Like, maybe something was supposed to be going on. Like, I can't recall if there were any credits or something. Like, maybe they're supposed to be using that time to do something other than just making you watch, like, football in slow motion. But, nothing happens. So, then they cut to the title screen. They're like, Death Note. And it's like, oh, alright, okay, so... Great, we've established nothing. Good use of that time, movie. You've really driven home the point. I'm hooked. Yeah, 30 seconds, and yeah, just slow motion football. Man, like, speaks volumes of what's gonna come. Fast-paced action. So, yeah, it opens up with this character named Light, and his last name isn't Yagami. The original book, it was all written in Japan, so all the characters were, like, Japanese, they had Japanese names and things like that. So, like, the original character was named Light Yagami. I can't recall what they named this guy. They Americanized his name or something like that, so I'm just gonna call him Light Yagami. Light Yagami! Light Yagami is sitting around on some bleachers, and he's watching his American football, and, nothing's happening. And then, like, a notebook falls out of the sky. And so Light Yagami goes to pick up the notebook, and he looks at it, and then it says Death Note on the front. And he's like, oh, Death Note. And then it starts to rain. So he puts the Death Note in his backpack, and then he runs around, and he turns, like, the corner, and there's this girl getting bullied. And I can't remember if this girl was important. Like, she may have been the female lead, but it took a while to, like, I don't know. I'm pretty sure she's just a brown-haired girl. And the main female lead was brown-haired. So I don't know why she was getting bullied, but she was. Maybe she was a different girl. I can't remember. I feel like there were two different girls. But anyway, though, oh, yeah, it was her, because later on, Light Yagami gets upset about it. So anyway, though, so Yagami, he intercepts these bullies, and he's like, hey, you guys are bullies! And so right away we establish that, Yagami is this really upsetting, like, stupid, obnoxious kind of guy. Like, he doesn't think very well, he's really impulsive, he's really emotional, he's not very likable, he doesn't have any friends, because he's unlikable and he's impulsive, and so he's like, hey, you guys, stop bullying this girl! And they're like, what are you gonna do about it, Yagami? And then Yagami, he's like, I'm gonna, like, you're gonna get in trouble. You're gonna get in big trouble. And so they just hit him in the face. And then he wakes up in detention, more or less. I mean, he doesn't really wake up then. He wakes up and there's, like, a teacher standing over him, and she's like, oh, Yagami, I heard that, look at these papers lying around. These are other students' essays. You've been writing essays for them. You've been doing other students' homework. Why would you do that? Everyone's gonna fail their classes if you do their homework for them on account of you being such a bad... You're so stupid. So anyway, so they take him and he gets detention for writing essays. And so, like, he's talking to the principal, and the principal's like, oh, Light Yagami, you can't be doing this. You can't be writing tests. You can't be writing other people's papers. And Yagami's like, he goes, Mr. Whoever you are, like, how can you say that? I got punched in the head. And the principal's like, look, I know you got punched in the head, but that's not why you're being punished. You're being punished because you're breaking the rules. And he's like, no, that's not fair. Like, we should punish the people who punch me in the head. And the principal's like, well, I didn't catch them, but I did catch you, so off to detention you go. So Yagami goes to detention. And, man, I hope you're on the edge of your seat now, because we've been, the movie's been going on for a little bit. and so far we've established some just real high stakes. And this is where the movie totally just takes off. What happens is Yagami's sitting around, and he's not doing anything because he's in detention. And then all the lights go off. And the chairs, they all fly away like in The Exorcist, like, wah, wah, the chairs start flying around. And then a guy in a suit comes out, and he's like, hey, Light. And it's like a demon. and you never get to see his face, and it's funny because this is like the way they set up the character. Like he's got like these lights on his face, and you know, if they actually show him, they have to do like CGI. So a lot of times what they do is they just like have him stand in darkness, so they don't have to do the CGI, or they have to do less CGI. You know, they get away with kind of being funny with this whole thing. So you don't really get very good looks at this demon very often. But he's like, hey, Light Yagami, my name is Ryuk. And, or no, he doesn't actually say his name at all. I think he just, like, approaches Light, and he's like, you got my notebook there, Yagami. Like, here, why don't you kill somebody with it? And Yagami's like, what? Like, I don't know about that, big monster demon that just scared me by turning off the lights and throwing around all the chairs. And the monster, he's like, no, it'll be great. It's gonna be awesome. Here's my pen, and he gives him a pen. Like, he really does, because Yagami's like, oh, I don't have a pen. And so the big monster just hands him a pen. He's like, oh, here, borrow mine. I keep it in my pocket. And so Yagami, then he, like, looks outside at the bullies that are out there, and he, like, writes down their name, and the big monster, he's like, that's good. All right, now you gotta write how he dies. Then he's like, okay, decapitation. So the guy gets decapitated by, like, a ladder. Like, this car crashes nearby, and like a ladder comes off the car and decapitates the guy. And then Light's like, oh my god. And then the monster, he's like, yeah, that was fun, right? So Yagami goes home, and he has like a discussion with his dad, I think. I can't remember when this takes place. It doesn't really matter very much. But he's like talking to his dad, and he's like, listen, Dad Yagami, I feel like I'm really mad because my mom got killed by a criminal once. Do you remember that? And then Dad Yagami, he's like, yeah, you know, but we gotta make peace, because that just happens sometimes. And Yagami's like, how can you say we gotta make peace? I'm still mad. And Dad Yagami's like, I know. Go to your room without any supper. Or I think Yagami might have stormed off on his own. I don't know. It was a stupid emotional exchange where Yagami's like, we could change the world if we just murdered everyone that we didn't like, if we acted as judge, jury, and executioner. And Dad Yagami's like, no, I'm a police officer. We can't do that. So Yagami goes up to his room, and then he opens up the book, and like the book has this warning in it. It says, do not trust Ryuk. He's evil. And he's like looking through, and there's like a billion different rules written in the book. Like, he opens up, and it's just like rules. There's like 10 pages of rules or something like that, like all written down. Rule number 1, rule number 2, rule number 23. And Yagami looks at it, and he's like, wow, there's a lot of rules. This is really dumb how many rules there are. There shouldn't be so many rules. And I felt like this was the director speaking directly to the audience. Like, he was making commentary. He's like, gee, guys, this anime sure was dumb. Look at how many stupid fake rules there are about this book. And I said that I wasn't going to compare the original to the movie, but like, it's part of where you see the director just like didn't understand the original anime. Like, all these rules were what created the suspense. Like, if you have no rules for the notebook, then you can just do freaking anything with it. So anyway, though, it turns out, though, like, he doesn't know any of the rules from the anime, so don't worry about it. Point is, yeah, he's looking through, and he sees this, like, note scrawled in the book that says, like, Ryuk, yeah, let's go with Ryuk. Ryuk is dangerous. Don't trust Ryuk. And so, like, the monster shows up, and he goes, who's Ryuk? And he goes, it's not Ryuk, it's Ryuk. And Yagami's like, he says that you're bad. And Ryuk, he goes, no, I'm sorry, Ryuk? No, right, well, it's actually pronounced Ryuk. But, Ryuk. And Ryuk, he goes, what's all this, Light? What's all this? Are we just gonna worry about rules and warnings? Like, don't you want to just murder people for the fun of it? And Light goes, yeah, I guess I do. And so he like writes down the name of the criminal who killed his mom in the notebook, and he's like, now that guy's gonna die. It's gonna be pretty great. And so then, like, the next day, his dad comes in. He goes, hey, son, Yagami, I just heard that criminal that killed your mom, he died. He died from being stabbed in the neck with a knife. And Yagami, he's like, oh, man, that sure is some news I didn't know about. And Dad Yagami's like, yeah, see you later. I feel better now. And so Yagami, he's like, see, I made people feel better with my murders. I should do murders all the time. I'm really good at them. So he goes to school and he's just like got the notebook open and he's like examining it, I guess. I don't know what he's doing. He's reading all the too many rules and everything. And so this girl comes up and sits next to him and she's like, "Hi, how you doing? My name's Mia." And Yagami, he's like, "Oh, do you want to see something cool?" And so he just like, he gets out the notebook and he's like, "I can kill people with this notebook." And so he like starts writing in the notebook and he like puts a name down and he's like, "Watch, it'll be something neat. I'll make him do a salute and then he'll die." And so the guy goes out there and he does the salute and he gets killed. And then, and so Yagami, he turns to Mia and he's like, "Is that cool or what?" And then Mia's like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool. You can kill people with the notebook? We should totally make out." So they go home and they make out and they start dating and they have sex. And there's like this whole montage that takes place from, like what they do is they just start killing people because, yeah, like Mia's like, "Listen, Light, you could kill lots of bad people with this notebook. You and I should kill lots of bad people." And so every murder is different. But Yagami decides that he wants people to be afraid of this Kira person. So every time he has people killed, apparently he makes them leave a note in Japanese. Even though the people he kills are like American and they don't speak a lick of Japanese, he like makes them go to the walls and write in Japanese like, "Kira was here," and he's like, they're like, why did you choose Kira?" And he's like, "'Cause that's the Japanese word for killer. 'Cause, you know, I'm trying to throw off the investigative trail. Everyone will think that Yagami is in Japan." And Mia's like, "Oh, that's really smart, Light. Like, you got it figured out." So you can apparently make criminals, using this notebook, based on the logic of the movie, you can apparently make criminals do things that they're not able to do. Like, if they can't speak Japanese, that doesn't matter. You can tell them to write in Japanese anyway. So, like, theoretically, Light could have done a lot more good for the world by making people, like, I don't know, discover the cure for cancer 24 hours before dying or something like that. Be like, man discovers cure for cancer, then dies. You know, other man finds work and publishes it, then dies. And you could just go through, like, this string of, like, you know, making the world better. Like, man invents flying cars, dies. Congressman passes, you know, feasible legislation on whatever, then dies. And, like, everyone who did something great would die. But, like, through a chain of deaths, you could really actually improve the world. You wouldn't just have to, resort to only murder. You could actually make people be the best possible humans that they ever were, like, through sheer fate and willpower. So, yeah, he doesn't do that, though. He just makes them write in Japanese. So he's doing this for a while, and there's this whole montage, and, like, he and Mia have sex, and they're like, "Oh, our relationship's doing really good, because all this murder that we're doing together, we're a murder team, I love murders." And then, we go to, like, Japan, where there's, like, this like, eccentric black guy in a hoodie who's, like, walking around, and he's investigating, like, the death of this criminal syndicate. And they're like, "So what do you make of this?" And he goes, excuse me, he goes, "I think Kira's in Japan." Not in Japan. Excuse me. He goes, "I think Kira's in San Francisco." And they go, "How do you figure?" And he's like, "Well, because I only leaked information about this particular criminal syndicate to people in San Francisco. So that must be where Kira is. Let's go to San Francisco." And so, you know, that's sort of like circumstantial logic. It's fairly flimsy. I mean, like, it is a crime syndicate. There must have been people on the inside who were aware of this crime syndicate. But, you know, whatever. He uses that little bit of flimsy pretext. And, you know, this wouldn't have worked if it weren't for the fact that Light's dad was, like, a police sergeant. Like, I'm not exactly clear on how Light was obtaining information from the police department, but apparently at some capacity he was, because it's mentioned a couple of times that he is. But, like, I don't know, like, what it is. I think his dad might have just been stupid. Like, I think that Dad Yagami was just coming home and just flat out telling Light about all the investigations that he was doing. So Light somehow he had some minor in knowledge about what was going on in the San Francisco Police Department. And apparently the police department really loved Kira, because Dad Yagami was the only one doing any research into the Kira cases at all, and they filled his locker with, like, string cheese and, like, dildos, and they were like, "Go home, dick cheese." They, like, left notes up in his foot locker. I mean, I wish that's what they'd done. It would have been a whole lot, like, I might have forgiven the movie. I would have given it points if they'd been that funny. Go home, dick cheese. Anyway, though, so they're like, "Go home, dick cheese," and so he shows up in his office, and then, like, Watery shows up. Watery shows up. This Japanese man named Watery, and he travels around with L. and Watery shows up and he says, "Dad Yagami, like, we want to talk to you." And Yagami's like, "Oh, all right, who are you?" And he goes, "I'm Watery. I'm here with L. L is the super smart investigator man who's done all kinds of super smart investigations in all kinds of different countries. Like, for example, one time we were in Japan, and other times we were not in Japan." And so Dad Yagami, he's like, "Oh, all right. That's good, because I'm the only one investigating Kira, and everyone told me to go home dick cheese." And so Watery's like, "Okay, well, let's go meet L." And so he takes him to go meet L, and L's like, "Hey, Dad Yagami, I have a brilliant plan to catch Kira." So it goes up on he does a press release. So like L goes up on stage, and he's like, "Hello everyone, my name is L. And today I want to say that Kira is the dumbest man ever. He scratches butts, and he picks his butt, and I'm pretty sure he eats the stuff that he picks. I heard that he's the fattest man in the world, and everyone should think he's fat. That is all." And so then he leaves. He's like, "See, I just made fun of Kira. Kill me, Kira, if you can. I bet you can't. You can't, can you?" And so then he like turns around and he comes back and he's like, "All right, I've narrowed it down. Kira lives in San Francisco." And they're like, "How do you figure?" And he's like, "Because I called him stupid and I said he picked butts and I'm not dead. So that means that he lives here." And then everyone's like, "That's brilliant, L. How did you make that deduction? Like, I never would have thought to do that." And I was like, "This is why I'm the most brilliant ever scientist/investigator there ever was." And so they, Yagami is like watching this, and then and then I think Mia's like, "We should kill him." And then Yagami's like, "Are you kidding? I don't want to kill like law enforcement. I just want to kill criminals. Like, why would I kill L?" And Mia's like, "Well, because he said you pick butts." And Yagami's like, "Yeah, I know, but he's entitled to that opinion." And Mia's like, "Ah, man, this is lame." So because L suspects that, he's like, "I figure that." Like, L goes, "I figure that Kira is somewhere in LA, and also probably he's connected to the police, because Kira knew things that the police knew about a very large organization that lots of people probably knew about. And so I figure it can only be, like, someone that you guys know. So I'm investigating everyone in the police department, including you, Mr. Yagami." And Mr. Yagami gets all upset. He's like, "You can't investigate my son. That's bad. I don't like that." And L's like, "Well, we have to investigate everyone because that's the police do that." And so Mr. Yagami's like, "I guess that's right. I don't know. I'll go along with it, but only because that's what police do." And so yeah, they send like a bunch of FBI agents after Light. And so Mia's like, "Oh man, we're being followed by FBI agents." Like, they're totally aware of it. There's no confusion on their part whatsoever. They're just like, "Yeah, that guy behind us is following us around, and it kind of sucks. Like, I bet they're gonna think that we're Kira." And Yagami, like, very, I think, sensibly goes like, "Why would they think that? Like, what would possess them to believe that we were the killers? Like, what? Like, all we do is write people's names down in a notebook. There's nothing to give us away here." And Mia's like, "Well, no, but we gotta kill them all because they're trying to catch us, you know, and if they catch us, we'll go to prison." And so Yagami's like, "No, and I'm in charge, so no." And so Mia's like, "Fine." So she steals a bunch of pages out of the notebook, and then what she does is she like approaches the FBI agent that was tailing her, and she just zaps him with a taser. And then she writes in the notebook that he will get up and then write all of his colleagues' names in the notebook, and then he and all his colleagues will go jump off of a building. So the FBI agent does that. He gets up and he just like does all this stuff. And again, like I say, you could write like, you know, kills himself and cures cancer. Like, I don't know. Like, he just does all this for her. Like, all the work is done. And then so L's like, "All the FBI agents are dead. Oh, man. That just goes to show that I was right, that Kira is probably Yagami. In fact, I'm so sure that Kira is Yagami, I'm going to take my next step." So what he does is like, Yagami gets really upset, and he's like hanging around in his house, and he like finds Ryuk sitting at a table like reading the comics or something like that. I can't remember what Ryuk was even doing. I think he was just eating an apple. And he's like, "Hey Ryuk, did you kill all those FBI agents?" And oh right, I forgot I was using bad names. Ryuk. "Hey Ryuk is correct. Ryuk. Right, Ryuk. Maybe I was right the first time. Anyway, he goes, hey, Ryuk, like, did you kill all those FBI mans? Because I'm super mad about that. And Ryuk is like, I don't know, what if I did? And then Yagumi's like, I'll write your name down in the notebook, and then you'll have to be dead, Ryuk. And Ryuk's like, oh, good luck, because other people who tried to do that only got to write 2 of the letters in my name. And I thought that was funny, because if you recall back, like, at the start of the movie, the words, don't trust Ryuk, he's not your friend, is written in the notebook. So obviously someone wrote all the letters in Ryuk's name. Like, I don't understand, like, yeah, except for that one guy, but I mean, he wasn't trying to kill me, so I let it slide. So obviously, like, someone had written all of his name down once before, just, you know, not at the capacity to kill Ryuk. So Yagumi's like, psh, I bet I could write faster than those guys. And he just, like, he goes up, he, like, storms off, slams his door. Like, I'm not gonna eat dinner, Ryuk. What do you think of that? And Ryuk just doesn't care. So, yeah. Anyway, he's hanging around and, like, I can't remember when he finds out that Mia stole notebook pages. I don't remember. It doesn't even matter. Because he goes to, like, this, like, little diner by himself for a while, and he's just, like, hanging around. And so L walks in to the diner, and then he sits down, and he goes, hey, Yagami, I'm L, and also I'm investigating you, and I know that you're Kira. And, like, Yagami is like, oh my god, man, listen, like, I can negotiate. I'll tell you everything if you get me a plea bargain. And L's like, you're not in a position to bargain or plead. Like, you're going down. Like, I'm telling you right now, I'm investigating you. I got wiretaps in, like, this particular part of your house. And, like, you have a car, there's a wiretap in your car in the glove box. Don't remove it, because it won't help you. And also, I've been watching you since, you know, back at this date. So I got you nailed down, Light Yagami. You're so screwed, Light Yagami. And Light's like, oh my god, man, oh my god, no, I want to help you. Listen, I'm not the only one. I have an accomplice. And then, like, L's like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. And then he gets out and he, like, leaves. and so, like, I don't know what exactly L thought he was accomplishing by doing that, by, like, tipping off his subject. He's like, listen, you're under surveillance, buddy. Like, I don't know. There was no sense in that. Like, Yagami got to see his whole face and everything. It was just stupid. So dumb. So Yagami goes home and he tells Mia, and he's like, I just saw L today. Yeah, he came into this diner, like, he's a black guy. He stood on his chair really weird, like, I don't know, like, he was a little bit too big to scrunch up in a little ball like that, but he tried to. He did his best. I think he was trying to copy, like, the mannerisms of some anime that he saw. Weird guy. Poor shut-in. Anyway, so, like, Misa's like, oh, we gotta kill L. And Yagami's like, I told you I don't want to kill law enforcement. And Misa's like, well, all those, like, FBI agents are dead, so it's too late for that. And Yagami's like, ah, man. Well, I guess what we'll do is, like, that guy Watery, who's friends with L, we'll write in the notebook that he calls us and tells us L's name. And then, like, you know, then we'll know L's name. So they write down that, like, Watery tells them his, like, they're like, within 48 hours, Watery tells me L's name, and then, like, he just calls me on my cell phone, like, directly onto my cell phone line, and says, hey, this is L's name, and then he dies. And so, like, Watery gets up, and he calls Yagami, and he's like, hello? Who is this? And Yagami's like, don't worry about who this is, who's L? And, like, Watery is like, I don't know. And then, like, Yagami's like, what? How do you mean you don't know? And Watery's like, yeah, L was in, like, an orphanage where we tortured children until they became geniuses. And Yagami's like, that's such a stupid thing. Really? Alright, well, like, tell me, how do I find out his name? And, like, Watery's like, well, I don't know. I mean, like, I could probably write it in Japanese if I didn't know, even though I don't know. Like, I actually know Japanese, so if I knew L's name, I could definitely write it. You know, like, we've established that there's no real rules or laws on this notebook already. But I guess what I could do is I could go all the way to New York and look this guy up, and then I'll tell you what his name is. And Yagami's like, alright, do that. You only have 48 hours. And, like, Watery's like, well, can I take a nap? And Yagami's like, no! And so Watery's just like, okay. So he just, like, drives, you know, he gets in a plane, he just, like, goes for, like, 48 solid hours, like, all the way out to New York or something like that. And so then L gets a phone call, and they're like, hey, L, Watery's missing. And so, like, L gets really mad, and he, like, goes to, like, Yagami's house, and, like, he sits down, and he's like, "What'd you do with Watery?" And Yagami's like, "I didn't do anything." And he's like, "Shut up! You totally did! I know it's you! I know you're the bad guy!" And Yagami's like, "Are you kidding? Like, do you have any proof?" And so, like, the police, he's like, I'm gonna make them search your house." So, like, Mia just, like, puts the notebook in her backpack and leaves. And the police, like, search Yagami's house and find nothing, as you would expect in that kind of scenario, because that's what happens when you have zero evidence and you completely jump the gun and you tip off your suspect that they're, being investigated. So they find nothing, and L winds up just looking really crazy. So eventually, for whatever reason, like, Wataru finds his way into this orphanage, and then he gets shot for trespassing by the New York police. Like, and I think this would be funny, like, if this were maybe a veiled commentary on, like, I don't know, police brutality, it might be a little bit amusing. I don't get the impression that's what it was. But, like, they just show up, like, the New York police show up, and they're just like, "You right there, stop!" And then they just shoot him to death. Like, he's not even doing anything, like, he's not armed. He's holding a flashlight and, like, a file folder, and they just gun him down. So, yes, they kill Watery, and so L, like, gets to be furious, and he grabs a gun, and he decides that he's gonna go and he's gonna shoot Yagami while he's at the prom, because Yagami's he's at the prom with Mia. They're doing a prom dance, and so Mia's like, "Hey, Yagami, I kind of wrote your name in the death notebook, but Ryuk said that we could, like, burn one of the pages, and if you burn a page, the person on that page won't die. You can only do this once for some reason. It's not important. Don't worry about it, but you can only do this once. So if you just give me the notebook, like, I'll burn the page and you won't die." And so Yagami is like, "Ah, man, Mia, I thought we were murder, like, boyfriend and girlfriend." And Mia's like, "No, because I want the book, like, for me personally. I mean, even though you kind of let me have totally 100% access to it, and there was not really very much conflict here, I just kind of wanted, like, whole control over the notebook." And Yagami's like, "Man, alright, I'll go get the notebook." So he, like, leaves to go get the notebook, and he takes it to this computer room. And then he writes out the ending of the movie in the notebook. Like, not even kidding. It's this whole elaborate, like, multi-paragraph, like, just this stupid, like, he writes out the whole climax of the film. He's like, "Yeah, so here's what happens." He comes back, and, like, I don't remember how they got to this point, but at some point they wind up in, like, a foot pursuit with L. Like, L's got a handgun, and he's just, like, chasing Light down the street with it. Again, like, he's got just as much evidence as I've described to you. Like, a little bit of circumstantial evidence, and, like, there's no hard evidence whatsoever. Like, a police search of the house yielded nothing but embarrassment for L. So he's just, like, chasing Yagami down the street, and he's not, I mean, except for Yagami's confession earlier on, which he rejected, I'll mind you. So anyway, though, so, like, he chases Yagami all the way, like, all up and down the street, and he stops him in the street, and he's like, "Stop right there, Yagami! I have a gun! I'll shoot you in the back of the head! Don't think I won't!" And so Yagami turns around and he's like, "Listen, L, I'm willing to cooperate. Like, I have an accomplice. I told you before, there's someone else with the notebook. I'll turn them in. I'll do anything you want. Just, like, promise me a plea deal." And then L's like, "I already told you I got you dead to rights. There's not gonna be a plea deal. You can't confess. Not when I've already proven you're guilty." And so Yagami, like, this guy comes out, and then, like, L's like, "Oh, sir, look out. This man is Kira." So, like, the guy just takes a 2x4 and he hits L on the back of the head. And he's like, "Go, my lord Kira. I will defend you from this policeman," or whatever he is. And so Yagami's like, "Okay, dude." And he just, like, runs off. And I thought that was really kind of funny, because I don't think they'd really done a very good job of establishing that apparently there was a Church of Kira. And I also thought it was funny that that man was so quick to believe that this, like, obnoxious teenager was totally his god. He was just like, "Oh, yes, of course. You look exactly how I imagined you would. Oh, I'm so glad I met you. All right, good luck, Lord Kira." So, yes, Lord Kira, he makes his run for it, and it's pretty dumb. Pretty dumb. So he goes up to this, like, Ferris wheel, and they get on this Ferris wheel, and they climb up the Ferris wheel, and he's like, "Listen, Mia, don't take the notebook. and she's like, just give it to me and I won't have to take it. And he's like, no, you don't want it because it's really bad. And also, Ryuk said that when I give the notebook away, he's gonna kill me. And Mia's like, well, that's kind of bad. I guess I won't take the notebook. And he's like, that's good. And then she takes the notebook from him when he lowers his guard. And he's like, aw, man. And so the whole, like, Ferris wheel falls over, like, with them in it. And it's funny because it, like, hurls light into the ocean. And then, like, Mia falls to her death on, like, hard ground. Which, this is actually interesting. We were just watching a video about, like, falling. Like, if you're in a skydiving incident. Like, people who survive skydiving incidents, apparently if you hit the water, you're more likely to die than if you hit the ground. Because if you hit the ground and brace yourself correctly, you know, you'll destroy your legs and probably your pelvis, but there's a chance you could be rescued. But if you hit the water, like, apparently water just doesn't really have any give to it. So, like, water is death. Falling onto water from a high distance is more fatal than falling into the ground. But anyway, or I think you have to fall in, like, soft dirt, I think is the idea. Like a swampland, but not water, you know. So anyway, she falls into, like, a bed of flowers or something like that. So she honestly probably got the better deal than Yagami did. But Yagami falls into the ocean and he's fine. Mia dies because he writes in the notebook that he'd be fine. This is funny, is like... So then he gets fished out of the water by, like, a doctor who puts him in a coma for 2 days. And then another man takes the notebook and uses it for 2 days. And then he brings the notebook back to Yagami and then he in the hospital and then he dies. And so L gets arrested for being crazy and running down the streets with a firearm without, like, any real reason to do so. And they're like, all right, look, you have enough pull to not get thrown into prison somehow. But if I see you again, then, I don't know, we're going to kill you in the streets or something like that, because we could do that. You know, this is the kind of society we live in now. So, yeah, like, Light's dad, Mr. Yagami, he shows up and he's like, son Yagami, like, are you actually Kira? And Yagami goes, yeah, I totally am. And let me explain to you how I resolved all this. You see, I wrote the ending of the movie into the book. And this is actually what he'd done. Like, basically, he'd written, Mia dies, and then he just, like, writes this, like, long string of, like, incredibly unlikely coincidences, like, all of these, like, stupid, like, magical, supernatural occurrences. Like, my page in the notebook falls out of the notebook and lands into an open fire somewhere, and I fall in the water, and I get fished out of the water, and this doctor puts me in a coma for 2 days, which leads the police to drop all suspicion of me, because there was no reason to really be suspicious of me in the first place, if we can be honest. And then this other guy, this pedophile, finds the notebook, and he uses it for 2 days before returning it to me, and then he commits suicide because he feels so bad about his crimes, and at the end of the day, I'm the hero and everything's great. And apparently, like I said, you can just write all this fantastical stuff in the notebook, and it totally works. And then what happens is, like, because Yagami gave away a whole bunch of information both times that L confronted him, like, L figures out that Mia was his accomplice and that Mia had pages from the notebook in her possession. So L goes to her house and he finds pages of the notebook, and presumably he writes Yagami's name in the notebook. And that's how the movie ends. So, yeah, real roller coaster, Death Note the movie. If you've seen the original Death Note and you think that sounds nothing like the original Death Note, like, you may recognize some of the pivotal scenes, but you'll also recognize that they are not applied at all in the way that, like, the story did. There's no suspense. There's no sense. Like, Light comes across as, like, irrational and Light comes across as, like, childish. He's like a little kid. He shouldn't be trusted with anything sharp. Like, he'd poke his own eye out running around with a pair of scissors. L comes across as just emotional and unhinged and not able to, like, put 2 and 2 together. Like, he doesn't have any patience. He's not able to actually corner criminals. A lot of times he's just making these really wild and weird assumptions, and it only works because, you know, he's just, like, miraculously correct here. There's no string of logic to follow. Like, there's no suspense. There's no drama, there's no build-up. Like, it's just such a terrible movie. It doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't know. And it's funny because you keep seeing these things. Like, if you're familiar with the original work, you keep seeing these references to the notion that the director really hates the original anime. Like I say, this thing where he talks about, like, there's so many rules in this dumb notebook. It's not said once or twice. It comes up, like, multiple times. Where Yagami keeps on talking about how, like, oh, man, this notebook has so many rules, and that is probably the dumbest thing about this notebook. Like, he just keeps saying this. And the movie really does go out of its way to not keep track of its own rules. Like I say, it contradicts itself a couple of different times. Like, it demonstrates that you can make people do things they don't need to do. They say, like, well, you need a name and a face to use the notebook, and then they make Watery kill himself, and they don't really have a name and face for him, because, like they only have the first name of like, Watery. Or if they obtained his real name, or if they obtained his like full name. I don't know how they did it. It's like maybe they mentioned it, but I just like slipped by me. I don't know. There's a lot of things they do. Like, they don't follow any rules. There's no point to the film. It's not Death Note. It wasn't trying to be good. Like, I don't know what the point of this film was, but it strikes me as just someone going to the bank and cashing a paycheck. Like, that must have been all it was. I feel like they probably invested as little as possible into this movie, and then cashed their check, and then just completely washed their hands of it and said, well, it's a dumb cartoon for kids anyway. Like, that's my impression of this whole film. So just legitimately terrible. A lot of people have probably dumped on it in the past. I'm probably not one of the first to do so, but this is my first time seeing it. So yes, I hope you enjoyed that recap anyway. You know, it was I'm a glutton for bad movies. So yeah, I suppose that'll be it for today. Thanks for joining me, everybody. I'll catch you all next time.